there, like a grant or a utility, then maybe it doesn't make it. So we're shaking up the dice every single time, and we put a lot of thought into the project we put out there. With a $60 million deficit and spending 18, obviously we're not gonna get all of them, and there's gonna be people that are, disappointed that their pet project isn't on the list, but we have to start somewhere. And these are basically the considerations that when we shook up and used our best judgment and put out the plan that you're about to see.
And so we'll jump into it. And certainly as we go along, I want to make sure that you hear more from Jim and from Bart about what went into the selection of some of these roads and what went into creating this list in general. But here are the proposed road projects that we have suggested to the Board of Selectmen that they consider including in a bond. So over on the west side of Winstead, at the downtown area, we're talking about Hennepin Road, Hubbard Street, Marshall Street, and Upland Road. In the Main Street core area, right here around Town Hall, we're talking about Case Ave, the Case Avenue Bridge, Elm Street, and Spring Street. And then over on the eastern side of Winstead, we're talking about Holabird Ave, Moore Ave, Oakdale Ave, and Whiting Street Phase 2. Note Phase 2 because Whiting Street Phase 1 is currently in pre-construction phase at this point in time and will be moving forward through a state grant. In Winchester Center, we're talking about the Mad River Bridge on Grantville Road. We're talking about Newfield Road, South Road, and Wanee Road. And in and around Highland Lake, we're talking about the Lake Street itself, Taylor Brook Bridge on West Wakefield Boulevard, and West Wakefield Boulevard itself. The total cost, when you add all of these different road projects up, is $15.3 million. And so, going back to the statement that we made earlier, that $60 million at least was needed to make all of our poor and failed and even and fair roads up into a good or excellent condition. These in front of you are all either failed or in very poor condition roads. These are, as Jim was saying, we took a lot of considerations as we created this list, and it still came out to a very high total cost in the grand scheme of things. It is feasible to go out and bond for this amount, certainly, but I hope that you do all understand that all of these roads cost a lot of money, and even if you might not see your road up on this list, we hope that you are seeing roads that you travel on frequently, roads that are very visible from your neighborhood or from the areas that you travel in order to get to your neighborhood. These are serious investments, these would be serious investments in the image of our town, in the town's infrastructure, in the safety of everybody who's passing over these areas. And we all believe very firmly that this is a set of road work that would be very positive for the town. So what you're seeing on the screen right now, this is kind of presented by area of town so that you can see the geographic diversity. However, we also have a proposed list of, or a suggested list of what road work could be done in any given year. So once this is all approved, in year one you could see 4 possible roads be done in that 1 year. That's a lot of road work compared to what we're usually able to do in the course of a given operating budget year. So you can talk about Holabird Ave, Marshall Street, Case Ave, and Whiting Street Phase 2 done just like that. And moving through years 2, 3, 4, and 5. We are estimating that this would be a 5-year project to complete these particular projects that you see on the screen in front of you. However, it should be noted that this doesn't take into consideration the general maintenance that comes out of the operating budget, the maintenance funds that we have. So there is still room for more road work to be done. And actually we'll get a little bit more into what some of that will look like in just a minute. But here you have a visual representation of the road work that we've just outlined for you. That road work is in orange, and it totals 9.47 miles. And there's also some blue markings up there. Would either one of you like to talk about that a little bit and maybe talk about how many miles of roads we have in town? Yeah, sure.
So the red markings up there are roads that would be improved due to the proposed bond. The blue markings are where other utility work is being done, therefore spreading out some of those costs. And, you know, we have 80 miles of road and the 88 miles of road, I think 84, 86, what's the actual paved mileage for? Yeah, so roughly 80 miles of road. The 9.47 miles is roughly 12% of the paved road surface in town. So, you know, that's a pretty good chunk of poor to very poor to failed roads that are going to be turned into excellent roads. Again, you can't bite off everything in one shot, but if you don't start somewhere, you're just never gonna get to the end.
And here on the screen, in front of you, we're showing an example of what we expect we're going to be able to do in the upcoming fiscal year with the money that has generally been given. Again, on average, it's $716,000. With that money in the operating budget, what kind of road work can we do? And this is a list of all of the different roads where we're going to be able to conduct crack and chip sealing. So that's different forms of preventative maintenance to make sure that these roads are staying in excellent condition or good condition, that they're not sliding into a poor or failed condition, all in an effort to make sure that we have the infrastructure that we want, that we deserve. And certainly after fiscal year 23, going forward, there's a lot of room for those operating funds to be used towards other small projects outside of the bonded projects that we just laid out in front of you. So again, here's just another comparison. If the town chose to stay the current course and not increase investment in roadways, and it tried to tackle all of the projects that we just listed, it would take 21 years to complete that list of projects. And with bonding through borrowing these funds, our goal would be to complete the work, like I said, in 5 years. So we're hoping that we wouldn't have to wait around until 2043 in order to see all of these projects completed. I believe that they will be completed certainly within the decade and even within the next 5 years. And there are also a number of non-roadway projects for consideration that I'll discuss right now. While we're going out to borrow for funds, now is the time, if we have larger capital items that we want to tackle, to make sure that they're borrowed, that we're borrowing the money for those different projects. So first and foremost, sidewalks. I know just over the past 3 days alone since the snowstorm, I've gotten a handful of complaints in my inbox, and that's very representative of what I see every week in my inbox about sidewalk conditions in downtown. A lot of folks commenting that the sidewalks can be trip hazards, certainly aren't level in all places, and certainly don't look the way that we want them, right? We want our downtown to be stunning to see, welcoming, very vibrant, and the way that we have our sidewalks right now isn't the welcoming vision that we want to have. So we estimate that in order to, and certainly it would cost a lot more to replace all sidewalks that are in need, but we've identified select sidewalks around town to the tune of $600,000 that would help us really focus on Main Street and connecting Main Street to, correct me if I'm wrong, Bruce, connect Main Street up to our schools and make sure that there are easy, even walking paths from the downtown core up to our schools. Second project, this is number 2 of 3 that I'll discuss outside of road and bridge improvements, is Highland Lake drainage. Highland Lake is one of the most wonderful natural resources that any town could ask for, and it's right here in our backyard. And we have a drainage system around the lake that's not necessarily as widespread as it should be. It's deteriorating. It's not processing water in a way that's protecting this natural resource. So in order to better preserve the quality of the lake for generations to come, we're proposing that about $1 million be allocated to this project to make sure that we have the drainage that we need out there, to make sure that that water is protected. And lastly, the fire department has a ladder truck. And Winchester has many buildings that are at least 3 stories tall, and so a ladder truck is very necessary to respond to these types of fires. We want to make sure that we're as prepared as possible, that we have one of these apparatus in our backyard, not 20, 30 minutes away, trying construction fire here in Livingston. We have a ladder truck right now, and it's outlived its useful life at this point. We're on borrowed time, and we're recommending, given the sticker price of $1.4 million for one of these vehicles, we're recommending that the town, while it's going out to bond anyways, bond for this vehicle as well. So when you put all of these projects together, you're talking about $15.3 million for the road and bridge projects. You're talking about another $3 million for the non-road projects, and that total is $18.3 million that we're proposing the town move forward with as the bond. Would one of you like to talk about the effect?
You gotta remember next time to add 3 slides to this. Yeah, it makes it a little easier to communicate. So earlier we showed you the 2016 and the 2019 pie chart. And so for the next meeting, we will have this so you can see them all together. This shows the excellent roads moving up significantly to 20%. I think they're 4% in the 2019 one. Failed roads would be down to 1%, but leaving only 25%, a quarter of our roads that are less than fair. So this is putting a lot of money and getting a lot of bang for our buck, we believe, which is why we thought we could get the most bang for our buck in these areas and still spread the wealth around. So this is kind of what we're looking at. This is the prize that we've got our eyes on, over the next 5 years as we get to this point.
Absolutely. And so we just to reiterate a lot of what's already been said, we believe that this will help major town roads become safer and easier to traverse. We believe that residents and businesses are going to be more attracted to town thanks to the improved image. We're working towards long-term goals of minimizing the needed annual road maintenance costs, or at least lowering what it would take to keep all of these roads up, even though we're not putting in enough as it stands right now to make sure that they're all kept at the same level. We're hoping that it's going to help improve property values around town, and that non-road projects will provide pedestrian safety, cleaner water in Highland Lake, and of course improve safety through the fire truck. So for the bonding timeline, Chris, you're going to speak to this.
So if the town were to go in this direction and approve at referendum a certain amount for borrowing, because of the long-term nature of the road improvement projects, it's not required for us to borrow all that money up front. We wouldn't be able to spend it all, as up front it takes 4, 5, 6 years to do the road projects. And so we can borrow those in 3 different funding events or tranches. And if we were to settle on the $18 million, then we could divide that up into $36 million bond issues, each separated by 2 years, which would gradually increase the need for the required debt service. It would all be the $1.3 million if the 4.5% interest rate is the one that we would be required to use, but we could spread that out so the burden on the taxpayers would be graduated. So no requirement to borrow all that money up front if the projects are going to be staged out the way you have in the middle.
And so we'll talk quickly about what the next steps look like. In order to move forward with these projects, the Board of Selectmen would need to decide that it wanted to pursue the projects by April 18th. By that date, we would have to put in motion having a special town meeting to discuss the matter, and of course, having the matter go to referendum. We do have an informational webpage that's been launched. That's townofwinchester.org/infrastructure plan. That includes this presentation, already loaded, a former version of this presentation. It's been very slightly edited just to re-emphasize a few points tonight. We have video recordings that are up there, we have detail sheets, will have detail sheets coming about the projects, and frequently asked questions page is going to be loaded tomorrow. We have 4 more info sessions that are going to be held, where we're going to try and answer questions and solicit feedback from the public. An informational mailer is currently being developed that's going to be sent to all Winchester and Winston residents about the proposed plan in an effort to try and help educate. And then, of course, like I said, after April 18th, that's when the town meeting and referendum would move forward, and residents would have that final say on, is this something we want to engage in or not? And to make sure that everybody, especially if you're online today and you want to come out to a future meeting, I will say for everybody who's in the audience today, our presentation is not going to likely change over the next several meetings. So if you've seen it now, you've seen it all. But we will have separate future public meetings. I encourage everybody to come see them. This coming Thursday, February 3rd, at the Winchester Congregational Church at 7 o'clock p.m. On Tuesday, February...
Winchester Center?
Sorry, did I say Winchester? Yes, the Winchester Center Congregational Church, yes. On Tuesday, February 8th, that's this next Tuesday, it's not tomorrow, it's next Tuesday, we'll be meeting at the Little Red Barn Brewery at 5:30 p.m. And giving this presentation there. Thursday, February 10th, we'll be meeting at the Winstead Senior Center at 7 p.m. And then finally, Wednesday, February 16th, we will have a virtual meeting via Zoom at 6 p.m. We have reserved in our schedules Thursday, February 17th as a snow day makeup session in case one of these other ones is not able to be held due to inclement weather. So again, these are open to the public. We're trying to solicit feedback. We're trying to answer questions before decisions have to be made. We want that feedback, and that actually concludes the presentation. So what we'll do now, if it's all right with you, Todd, is we'll turn it over to the mayor to moderate discussion. We have the 4 of us here who will be able to help answer questions, and we'll also, of course, accept comments from the members of the Board of Selectmen who are here tonight.
We are having some technical difficulties with the YouTube live stream. We'll have the video posted as soon as we can. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to citizens' comments. Please identify yourself and your address. Would anyone like to speak or ask questions?
Yes, I will. My name is Russ Davenport. I live on, my wife and I own 95 Wheeler Street. I grew up here and went to Gilbert and moved away for quite a while. I've been back and moved to our house about 8 years ago. So I've seen the downtown. You know, I grew up in Winchester, so I know what the roads are like up there, and I also know what the sidewalks are like downtown. So I guess I had a set of 2 questions I'll break down, or 2 parts. One is just some general questions about the financing part, and then the other would be about the sidewalks. About the financing, the 18 million that we're borrowing, is that what is would more be matched from the state? Because in the number before, what we've done per year, part of that, half of that was matched, you were saying in the first clip, was matched by the state. So does the state now match, if we borrow 18 million, is there, say, I don't know, another 5 million that we'd be able to qualify or get money from the state to continue with this? Because we've done that in the past, or how does, I guess that's how would that work?
You want me to do it?
I'll start, and you can fill in the details. So, good question. This 18 million represents the town share of the projects, but the project costs that you saw listed do not include what we've already kind of anticipated in terms of some grants and some programs with respect to bridges where the state participates. I don't recall the actual number, but this road work, the $15.3 million would probably include, I think, another $5 or $6 million of funds from Department of Agriculture and
Yeah, between LOTSIP and the Federal Local Bridge Program, and I'm not sure which of the other ones we have.
I think we had there's, Oliver gets some money because it's a feeder road, right?
Yeah, that's the LOTSIP.
So that's not, so the projection really, the 18, it'd really maybe be more like 25, so we accelerate this, correct? But we can't really depend on it, is that sort of how we look at it?
So, yeah, accelerate, I would say leverage it.
Okay.
You know, so the 18 million that the town is intending to spend will in fact be more than that on the ground, at some point. Can you count on it? We're pretty confident with with the estimates that we have. You know, the federal local bridge program is at this point in time is being funded more and more with the infrastructure money that's coming down from Washington. Lot SIP is it's a pretty long-standing program that, maybe once every 5 years we get a crack at it. I applied for this Lot SIP stuff 5 years ago, and we're just getting it in the ground now, so we're pretty confident in that number. Now, the engineering estimates, as you're a contractor, estimates are through the roof right now and changing by the day. So some of these estimates are old, some of them have been updated. That's a much bigger question, I think, than the grants that we have already secured or are hoping to secure and their viability.
So that it is, overall, it's a good thing, the state will put some money in,
Sure.
it's not like they're gonna match it, but we'll get to pick up there.
And there's utility work too. If the gas company has to do something, we go in, and this is routine anyway. The gas company says, hey, we'll take Lake Street, for example. They are gonna be doing a new gas main on Lake Street. Well, we wanna get up there ahead of that, or right behind them, and fix whatever drainage issues we have, maybe some of the curbing or sidewalks. And so we're leveraging, because they're required to repave that road. So they will give us a payment in lieu of the paving, and we hold on to that and match it when we do, because they'll do 2 inches, we'll do 2 inches. So, we're leveraging things like that, same with the sewer and the water, and, so we're trying to leverage everywhere we can, which is partly why what we have on the list is on the list, because we're leveraging it and, trying to just be efficient. Because one of the things I knew growing up in this town was I would see a road construction project, and then a year later or 6 months later, you'd see it dug up again. And sometimes it's inevitable, but we're trying really hard to avoid putting the public and ourselves through that.
It bothered you at a young age?
It did, yes, it did.
I get that.
Mostly because it bothered my dad, and he would point it out to me, that's
Yeah.
crazy. But yeah, so we're doing our best to leverage all these projects together and schedule them so that they make sense.
Right.
Like Hubbard Street, we had that plan when we did Overlook. The engineering is all done. We put it on hold because we didn't want the gas company to come in and tear up a road that we did. So we're working with them. We work with them on a 5-year look ahead.
Right.
So we tell them what we're planning, they tell us what they're planning, on the same office with water and sewer, so we're talking all the time. So you don't always get it right, but we've significantly reduced the amount of times we have to open up a road that's been repaired.
Thank you. The other phase of the finance question, I guess I clarified that, was what about, where do we stand with I guess what we call the operations budget, that we normally put 700 to 800,000 per year for this sort of work. To me, I've only lived back here 8 or 9 years. Is that reasonable? To me, from the outside, it seems low. It seems like we haven't devoted enough town funds to that every year. Is that something that's on the table to increase that some more, or would that require essentially some sort of tax increase? Like, how would we, if the operating budget for it is, to me, really low, like we've gotten behind, we've never been able to devote that much money to it. Obviously, we're gonna borrow money, which I think is a good idea to accelerate it, but can we also accelerate it by devoting more of our resources, essentially all our taxes that we pay here, to that operating budget? To me, it just seems like it's low.
So, out of that $716,000 average, we have been trying to do both routine and preventive maintenance as well as improvements. The bond is gonna really start working on those big improvements.
Right, I get that.
So that 700,000, that we're using currently is gonna still do a lot of routine maintenance. Now, as the roads get better, there's gonna be a little bit increased cost of the preventive maintenance, because there's more roads that you're trying to keep in an
Right.
excellent condition. So it's a moving target.
So I get that, but what about, is the, I guess maybe it's more for the selectmen or the town manager, would we, in the future, or do people see the need to potentially increase that budget?
Yeah, I think I'll hand this off.
Yeah, well, no, yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm asking a hard question, but it's the right.
It's a good question.
to ask.
When we deal with averages, that 716,000 was essentially over a 5 or 6 year period. Actually, in the last couple of years, we have bumped that up. It's
Okay.
approaching $1 million a year that we're giving to the highway department to do the maintenance, the standard crack seal and chip seal stuff, but also tree work, engineering for a lot of these projects that are on the list, that requires a bunch of engineering investment. And then occasionally doing a project like Upland Avenue and Pratt Street culvert is all taken care of out of the money that is appropriated out of the general fund. So they've been able to do some of these smaller projects, but you can see the size of these larger projects would just eat up one of those annual appropriations without giving you an opportunity to continue to maintain and continue to engineer and that kind of thing.
So I guess the answer is that we have increased that a little bit, and that's sort of a set, at this point, that's a set amount.
We're trying to keep that there, yes.
But the original road plan said we had to put in $4 million a year if we
Right.
really wanted to take care of our roads. So we haven't been able to do that as a town, to be able to afford that $4 million. That's why we've come to this point in the road, where we really have to. if we're
Because we
really gonna
couldn't
see-
afford to increase that segment of the budget, or we didn't decide to increase that segment of the budget, I'm not
There were
sure.
so many things that we didn't have.
Right,
16 pieces of equipment for, public works and vehicles, so
Right.
many things that have to be addressed all over the entire town, over that, since that roadwork plan was. But we needed a baseline, so we knew where to start, so that's why we started then with that survey.
yeah, I got you. Yeah, it seems like the town has got a lot of new equipment, has helped, and that you need to build that infrastructure that was left to, I guess, rust would be the term. Rust away and build that up to gear up for more projects like this. I guess the other question I had to do a little bit more specifically towards sidewalks. Like I said, I've lived in both parts of the place, and if you live up Winchester, you don't really drive around the town or would walk around the town too much and see the level of the deterioration of the sidewalks. I guess one question I have moving ahead with some sidewalks is that going to be the policy that it is the town that will, in a sense, improve or improve some of the sidewalks that are broken down? Would the town improve it, and then the homeowner, obviously, in theory, is supposed to shovel in front of your house? Would that be the policy moving forward, because I feel like it's been a gray area policy, it's never been addressed too much, so I feel like moving ahead, it'd be nice to see, okay, well, no, the town is going to rebuild sidewalks, or potentially require some people to do some maintenance on their own sidewalks, and also make sure that they are plowed in the winter or shoveled, whatever, because kids need to walk to school, which they can hardly do right now. Like, everybody's seen sidewalks, so.
Right.
That's one of my sidewalk questions.
And so what I'll say about sidewalks in general, I had a feeling that this question would come up, is that, for those of you who are very familiar with our ordinances, with the town charter, you know that the total care of sidewalks is the responsibility of the abutting property owner, according to the current town charter and the current ordinances. what we're seeing, as you said, and as we see outside, is that there are instances where that upkeep hasn't occurred, and even in some cases where the upkeep isn't necessarily reasonable to occur. You've got a lot of wear and tear that's occurring in some areas of town that's not necessarily the fault of the abutting property owner. We have a lot of questions about what's fair, what's affordable, what's reasonable. And so what we're proposing here going forward is not necessarily a change to the overall policy, but in this singular case. So we're going to continue to discuss that, and that's something that really the Board of Selectmen needs to decide. And I don't want to speak for them. But what we're proposing with this one-time investment in sidewalks is to make improvements to what we're deeming to be essential walkways.
Sure.
That's walkways that cater to the business core right down here in downtown and up to the schools. We think that those are of paramount importance for health, safety, accessibility reasons, and therefore we think that the town should have a stake in that to some extent. But that being said, the policy for other sidewalks for this going forward might not change. That's something that continues to be discussed.
But the town's never, I guess it's more a question for the selectmen, I mean, I've never heard of the town, I mean, I think it would be obvious the town's not asking people to improve their sidewalks, because there's some that are so bad, you know, you wouldn't at all, you can't even shovel it. So it's really been something that's, I feel, it's kind of never been addressed over the years that I've seen. You know, I think this is a perfect time to address it and move ahead as to, you know, is the town going to, how's the town going to deal with those what we're, I guess, deeming less essential sidewalks, right? I think we can all agree that the kids need to be able to go to the schools, and those sidewalks should obviously go first. That said, of the 600,000, what is the 600,000 getting? Like in lineal, do we know in like lineal footage? I mean, maybe that can't be answered in this question, but I guess I just want to gauge it. Is that enough? Should we allocate more funds to the sidewalks, which I think there's definitely a huge image for the town, which you've all identified. You come into town, especially in the summer, not only do you see them broken down, but you see, which is I guess a separate thing, you see the vegetation growing up to it, which I think as we put new sidewalks in, that would be easier to maintain, or people would see it more and want to maintain it more. But going back to what, I guess my question is how far would that get you? Is it enough? Is it gonna be then put in the budget every year, like with the town, with the roads? Are we gonna try to separate out and have a sidewalk budget to keep moving ahead with rebuilding them?
Yeah, these are all good questions and thought-provoking ones, because we really haven't made an annual investment in sidewalk infrastructure at this point. $600,000 will, if you were to replace concrete sidewalks, that translates into about 4,000 to 5,000 feet, linear feet of 5-foot wide sidewalks. Somewhere around between $125 and $150 a linear foot. So depends on, you know, that may be on a high side estimate, but the traditional, a couple years ago, was about $100 a square foot. So we've got to just allow for some inflation. But we can make some significant improvements to the sidewalk routes by addressing the problem areas.
Sure.
And then helping the homeowners understand how they can do the vegetation management on their walkways to allow for full 5 feet that is really in the ground already, but because of vegetation, you're only getting 4 feet, and it makes it hard to maintain in the winter, et cetera, et cetera. So we're optimistic that $600,000 investment, possibly with some other matching money coming from some other sources in town, that we could take care of the Main Street, western edge of Main Street, at least on the north side, and then get Elm Street, you know, all a good sidewalk from Main Street up to Pearson School, also from Hinsdale School over to Pearson. Get Wetmore, a good sidewalk, Wetmore down to North Main Street, and then take care of North Main Street from Wetmore down to Route 44, where we've got some sections that are not as good as some other sections, which are really in excellent condition. So we would have essentially a couple of good circles that would allow for safe transport and, for pedestrians, you know, as a start.
Yeah, and it, like I said, it seems like it's something that could be put in the budget every year to start slowly doing it, because even if the budget only allowed, I don't know, another 1,000 feet a year, it's still 1,000 feet, which is a lot of bang for your buck, and we have great walkability in the town, we just haven't allocated the funds and whatnot to keep that going. And those are my only questions for you, thank you.
Thank you, Russ. Anyone else like to speak?
Hi, Sandy Adams, I'm part owner and building manager of Whiting Mills. And, Jim had mentioned that utility companies will have some kind of input in doing some work, where they're doing work where they're gonna be replacing roads and things. And of course, we just went through this, phase of, I don't know if it was Eversource or whoever it was that was doing utility work on 3/4 of Whiting Street. And they did do a patch job, but the patch job they did was pathetic. And I have to commend the town crew when they plowed it. They just didn't dig up all those areas because it was all raised and pretty awful. So I would like to think that we could approach Eversource and ask them to have some kind of a donation to the town when we go and pave that road.
So, Eversource had to do that work for our road. So I was not, you know, they had an existing gas line that was in place, that was adequate. The change in grade that we're doing to that road to make it work with all the other design issues required us to, require them to take their good gas line and make it deeper. So, yeah, their patch job should have been better. But I don't intend to go after them for that, because they were doing that for a town project. Now, just like I wouldn't expect them to not give me their fee in lieu of for paving on a road that I still have to do a project on. So there's a little give and take, but yeah, you're right.
But you have plans to take care of that surface?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah, that patch is not gonna be left the way it is for certain. But, you know, they were working, you know, during some cold weather, I'm sure they got some frozen material buried in there, and thought it was, yeah, but to have them, yeah, I'm not gonna chase them for that, because they were doing, that cost them a lot of money out of their pocket just for a project that we're doing for our needs. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
And just on a personal note on that, they were working on Whiting Street for 2 or 3 weeks, and unfortunately, they never informed anybody that they were closing the road off. So of course, you know, we have 59 tenants in our building. There's an apartment building across the street, and people would go to work or leave to go to work, and the road was closed. So it would have been nice if they had informed people that the roads were gonna be closed.
Yeah, I continually fail to do notifications. It's not my strong suit, and I will endeavor to do better. That's all I can say.
We survived, but
I know, but it's, yeah, first of all, I didn't think it was gonna take that long to go from start to finish, but if they didn't, I should have at least notified you, so I'll take at least half the blame on that one.
thank you. And then my other question is, I don't know anything about bonding, so, if you're talking about potentially, eventually bonding for $18 million, and you were talking about doing 6, 6, and 6, and you were also mentioning that the interest rates are way down right now, I don't know if they do bonding things like they do a construction mortgage, where you can go out and borrow the 18 all at once, but not use it all? And do you have to pay interest from when you bond it, or do you pay interest when you start using it?
You know, that's another good question. So when we go to, if we get approval on this, we will use a financial advisor, someone who's very familiar with the municipal bond markets, and they'll give us a number of different options. And so we'll certainly look at perhaps trying to lock in at the lowest rate possible, you know, and so it may be that depending on where the market conditions are, we may choose to do option A versus option B. So, I don't know how that's gonna look. You know, I'm not gonna predict interest rates. I used the 4.5% interest rate in the slideshow, just so that, that's the historical borrowing rate that the town has experienced, 20 years ago. Now, the rates for municipal, borrowings are quite a bit lower than that, but I did not want to, anticipate a particularly low rate. So I just wanted, that's historically where the town has borrowed, but those rates, were put in place about 20 years ago. But it's a placeholder. We'll know a lot more if we have, if we get a successful referendum vote, then we can, work with our financial advisor to come up with, a favorable scenario for the town to take advantage of the lowest rates possible.
And then lastly, and it was, you were talking about sidewalks, and certainly concrete sidewalks are very desirable, they look nice, and that's certainly what should be on Main Street. But knowing what the cost of a concrete sidewalk is, has there been any thought to the side streets using blacktop? I've seen it in other municipalities, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, we've had some discussion on that. We don't exactly have a cast in stone, no pun intended, specification that requires concrete. Most of the non-concrete sidewalks that you see actually were concrete at one time, and they put asphalt or something over the top of it. Right now, if I had to read the lay of the land of all the people we've been talking to about this, we would require concrete along, Main Street, North Main Street, South Main Street, all the state roads, and then some distance off of those state roads, a block, a sight line, as far as you can see, or two intersections. We don't know exactly what that is, but I don't think we're gonna hold concrete as the only source. I do think there's some things we would limit. We wanna limit it to something that the town can repair if they have to get in there and dig for some reason. So if someone's putting in, pervious pavers, that's a really expensive thing for us to maintain, so we probably wouldn't allow that, but to demand concrete everywhere, I don't see that as being likely, but time will tell.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak or ask questions?
Can I ask one more question? When you finally do the engineering work on some of these roads, how long is the engineering work good for? I mean, if you do the engineering work and you don't get to do the road, how many years do you have to do the road before they ask you to go back and do more engineering work?
Usually the engineering work has a pretty long lifespan. But the things that don't have lifespan are the technical specifications, because materials change over time, or if there are permits, with the funding agencies, DOT, the Department of Health, all those folks, things change, and cost estimates, of course, change dramatically in a very short period of time. So all those things, the basic design generally stays pretty stable, but the ancillary stuff, the contract may change, insurance requirements may change, things like that need to be updated as you go along. So if we do a project, you try not to do the engineering on a project too many years ahead of time, but you still need to start that work several years ahead of time in order to get everything in place, all your permits in place, so you're ready to go to construction when you have the money available.
I understand that they had done engineering work on Hollywood Avenue years ago, and it had to be a lot of years